sales is the most lucrative skill in the world, period. The problem is most sales advice out there today is outdated, cheesy, and can even keep you from getting the deals that can make all the difference in your career. This is the No BS Sales School, a podcast for entrepreneurs and salespeople who want to master the skill of selling without all the BS. Listen, if you're like me, you hate doing admin crap. Number one, because you're not good at it. And number two, because you know it's taking you away from the stuff that actually makes you money. So why are you doing it? Do what I did. Go to worksby.com right now and let them pair you with a real executive assistant. Once I started working with Cheryl at Worksby, my income went up 40% in 1 month, and my working hours went from 70 down to 40. It's a game changer. Go to worksby.com right now, book a call, and tell them Walker sent you. If you do, you'll get 2 extra hours of service for free as a bonus. So if you're ready to finally stop doing the stuff you hate and focus on the stuff that makes you money, go to worksby.com right now. That's WORXBEE.com. Tell them Walker sent you, and you'll get those 2 free hours. Welcome to the OBS Sales School podcast. I'm your host, Walker McKay. Today, I am super excited to have as my guest an old friend, an old client. His name is John Sterling. John is the CEO of a software company called Foxfire, which helps people figure out what they have in their warehouse, how to get it in, how to get it out faster. And he's also the author of a book that's become big on Amazon. It's called Sales for Noobs, Noobs. John's got a great story, a great life story, and a bunch of good messages. Listen today. You need to listen today to figure out how to plan your sales career. This will be especially important for those of you that are newer, right? And to be more intentional about what it is that you want to do in your sales career. Hey, John Sterling, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Mr. Walker.
So glad you're here. It's an honor. How are you doing today?
I'm having a super day. I'm glad we pulled this off.
Good.
Happy to be on your podcast.
Good. John has been very busy being an author and having all these book signings and everything else. So I'm glad he took some time. So John, take 2 minutes. You've had a really fascinating history and it doesn't do it justice, but take 2 minutes and tell me how you got to be where you are. Can you do that?
Yeah, I will. I made a couple of good decisions. So maybe out of 8, I made 2 good ones. And one of them was to go in the technology sales business in the 80s when software was just taking off. You know, I read some article in Forbes magazine or something about Silicon Valley. And the second one was that I physically got up and went out there. So I relocated myself from South Carolina, Silicon Valley, picked the right industry and started to learn. And in those 2 decisions, I guess, led me to a nice career in technology sales, eventually moving back here and being with a couple of different good software companies. So, you know, in essence, it kind of led me to want to, I guess when the virus hit, I'm like, what am I going to do? Watch the Netflix or write a book? So I wrote the book. And anyway, it was all about trying to make good decisions when you're starting your sales career that will lever you up versus levering you down.
So you really were selling software way before that was cool.
Yeah, trying.
I mean, because it's most recently, it's like, oh, you know, sell software, what a cool thing. But back then, shit, nobody really knew what it was. I mean, it was hard that you got your head around, that you had the vision. And I'm just going to say, maybe you did, maybe you got lucky, but you sure as hell went out there and put yourself in a place where you could get lucky.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm going to tell a quick story about John and me. The first time I met him, I had been calling. This has been about, 15 years ago. And I'd called John, reached out to John maybe 10 or 12 times, never returned my phone call. So finally, I met somebody that knew him and I asked them if they would introduce me to John, right? I used my little C-suite introduction blueprint thing that some of y'all have gotten from me. And I got to John and I had this sales call with him. And John was this big, in my mind, kind of bigger than life guy. He had run worldwide sales for a software company. He probably had 500 or 1,000 or 15,000 salespeople reporting to him at some point. I don't know. And I'm walking the meeting with him and his right-hand person for this software company they're running then. And I was like, I was intimidated because shit, John had sold more stuff in a year than I had sold in my entire career of all the things I'd ever sold. But we ended up having a really good conversation, and it took me to the end where I didn't think they were going to buy. But I asked him to make a yes or no decision. And so as I asked him, I said, "Hey, John, you mind telling me whether or not at the end of this meeting it makes sense to hire me?" So he agreed to that. And in the meeting, he said, "Well, let us think it over." And I said, "Okay, that makes perfect sense." And I said, "I'll wait." And so I walked outside the conference room, and you looked at me like, "What the fuck was that?" And I waited outside, and you came out and you said, "All right, let's do it." And I was like, holy shit, he actually bought from me. That was unbelievable. What in the world could I possibly teach you? And I asked that question, what could I possibly teach you, John, about sales? And you said, I know how to sell software in a big company, but I hadn't figured out how to sell it as an entrepreneur. And that's kind of where we got started. But anyway, I am proud to know you. You and I have had a lot of things going on in our lives. Have been cool to work through together.
Yeah.
A quick question for you, John. Why the hell does this world need a book called Sales for Noobs? What does this bring to the world that's not already here?
Okay, so one of the cool things I got to do was hire and train about 200 brand new sales reps, people that came out of colleges, most of them Wofford, Citadel, Furman, and Clemson. We didn't go as far north as Washington and Lee. Plus, those guys were too expensive. We couldn't afford them. But anyway, so I got to see, hundreds of people go through this process, and I just noticed some patterns of things they should do and they shouldn't do if they want to be successful. For example, here's an easy one. Don't get a DUI. That's going to completely derail your career. It's like it's 100%. If you want to be messing around, taking that chance, that's not going to work. Don't go into sales if it doesn't really match up well with who you are. You can't pretend to like to do what we do as salespeople, just like I couldn't pretend to like to be an accountant. So I'm a big believer in, getting your psychological profile done early on to start to figure out what area you want to go into. The other thing, Walker, is I see these people. I keep up with at least 100 of these ex-salespeople. This is 12 years after we sold the company. And to see them flourish, to see how well they're doing.
Isn't that a thrill?
And yeah, it's a huge thrill, but part of it is because they managed to get into a good position early, and they have leveraged that as they have grown into other companies, VPs of sales, buying their own company. I mean, there's 65, CEO, VP of sales types that came out of that group. So I love seeing it. And if I can pass what I've learned on to people that are currently 18, 19, 20 years old, thinking about sales, and they'll do a little bit of work, then, we can help a lot of people.
You mentioned something a few minutes ago. That's great. I love that. You mentioned something a minute ago about psychological profile, make sure that you're, set up well for sales. I believe a lot of the advice, I think you might agree with me, a lot of the advice people get of why to go into sales, like number one, you've got thousands of friends, you can talk to anybody. That's freaking terrible advice for somebody to go into sales. Right. What are tell me about a psychological profile or the kind of person that may be well suited to go into sales, John?
Well, I mean, I use a test called the Kolbe test, KOLBE.com. Not really expensive. I'm not associated with them, but I use that test. Yep. And it's only 4 numbers, easy to track, and the numbers just need to be within a certain range. So you want to, it's fact finder, follow through, quick start, and implementer, and you kind of want to be, 4 or above on all of them. And just kind of have a general, you have some fact finder, some back follow through, maybe a little more quick start would be perfect, and implementer doesn't really matter that much. So that's kind of what you want as a balance with a hint more towards quick start. So I would start with that. Sometimes
let's pretend they don't. What about if we don't have a Kolbe, but you just kind of know somebody? What are some things in somebody's head that might trigger sales might be a decent career for me? Can you think of something?
Well, a logical way to do it is you start stripping away what's not going to work. So you've got your doctors, your lawyers, your nurses, your people who are already going into other professions, and that leaves a big chunk of people. What is it they're going to do? I mean, businesses hire mostly salespeople for, after that big jump. So of those people, Walker, they're generally going to be already leaders. They were leaders on campus. They were captain of the team. They were head of the theater group. Anything where they showed some leadership ability would make them a natural to be considered for sales. Okay. And another misconception about sales is it's not all or nothing. It's like if you want to go into business, if you almost want to enter the world of adulthood, getting a couple years under your belt in sales is a good idea. And maybe you love it and you become $1 million a year salesperson and you don't have to worry about managing anything.
Yes.
Maybe you move into marketing or maybe management or something else, but
because that's every CEO's job is to be a salesperson, right? That's what they're supposed to do is go sell the company. And if it's a publicly traded thing, improves the stock, but you're also getting your vision sold. So if people say, I don't want to go into sales, I want to be a CEO. Well, that happens, but most CEOs have come through the sales rank. And what I know about company leaders is if they don't understand sales and they're trying to hire a great sales team, if they can get in the way and cause that great sales team to be, to leave. So when did you know you want to be in sales?
I came pretty natural to me. I mean, when I was in high school, even before, I was out hustling up business to cut yards, going door to door, collecting money on the paper route, selling bumper stickers for the big football game. I mean, just little stuff, but it was very natural for me. I went to the Citadel, which kind of shut everything down for 4 years. I mean, it's not an environment where you can have a part-time job, but in the summers I did some stuff that was kind of sales related. So I kind of felt like that's the direction I was going. Very comfortable to me talking to people and trying to help them solve their problem.
That's cool. So when somebody is thinking about a sales career, what should be some red flags that they might see that this is not going to be the right fit or not the right opportunity? Do you have any red flags that somebody might see that's not the right opportunity?
Well, definitely the test. The test is black and white. I've never seen somebody, who had completely wrong scores do well, or completely right scores do terrible. It's like it's within reason. It's a pretty good indicator. There are people out there, complete introverts, that get very nervous and jittery of any kind of like outside interaction or something like that. I mean, those kind of people might want to find something that's a little more introspective oriented. But for the most part, go ahead.
I have found that the number one thing that I would look at is how willing are they to work? Because as you know, the beginning of everything is the behavior. What is it that you're willing to do to go find clients or to follow up on these leads, to learn the stuff that you're selling, to learn how to sell and to learn how to empathize with other people? And I found if somebody's got a good work ethic and willing to pick up the phone, willing to make the calls, willing to set meetings, if you know you're not willing to do that, don't go into sales. How about that? Is that reasonable?
I think that's reasonable. And I would add that you and I both have very outgoing personalities, but if someone's willing to do the work with less outgoing, I think it's completely fine. It's actually less threatening to the poor prospect, that some normal person is coming to talk to them and not some crazy person like Walker or Sterling.
Yeah, right. But I believe too that introverts have somewhat of an advantage anyway, because they're used to listening and to asking questions, as opposed to us extroverts. So we've got to learn to shut the hell up.
Right. They also, they're more willing to do the work. Study.
So to study and study the sales process and study the materials. So you started selling, you went to Silicon Valley to California, what year?
84.
Okay.
84.
So I was just in college at that point. So what's changed in sales since you started, John?
Well, the CRM's gotten a lot better. That's for sure. I mean, there was something called I don't even know if ACT was out then. I think it was more,
Yeah.
maybe we kept it on Lotus Notes or something.
Yeah. I think it was Lotus Notes and then ACT. And we stepped up to
Yeah.
ACT about 1990
Yeah.
or 88.
The role has been divided, from a business development manager, and then you've got an account manager and a customer success manager. And it's like there's 3 or 4 different pieces of sales for every account. That's a new thing.
As opposed to having one guy who goes out and catches it, skins it, cleans it, manages it, right? And so now they're broken into different pieces.
Yeah, and I can remember being a proponent of that when we'd split it up this inside, outside. And I said, why don't we just take all the money we're spending, divide it evenly by people, and just saying, eat what you kill, guys, go get it. And I don't think that's the right way to do it. At the moment I did, but I think the way they're doing it now is pretty good because people have quotas for how many target prospects do I find, this week, and then how many appointments do I get set, and how many people do I get who's ready to talk to the closer. It seems to work pretty darn well. The way
you can focus on kind of a small segment and get really, really good at that.
Yeah.
Is there a particular industry now, or industry or 2 or 3 that you would say, if you're looking at sales with good opportunity, here's a place, here's some couple of different industries you look in? Do you have a feeling about that?
Well, I think Salesforce has got a remarkable sales organization right now. I've got, one of my really good old lieutenants working there now. He tells me all about it, but he says it's a machine like he's never seen. And he's also worked at Oracle. I've got one who works at SAP and one at Microsoft. So I kind of get a flavor of all of them. And Salesforce seems to be the most machine-like. So if I was recommending to a young salesperson who was going into technology, I'd say I would pick Salesforce first to get that first couple of years of experience.
Yep.
Then branch out from there.
How about outside of technology, John? Do you have an idea of where some places you might recommend?
Not
necessarily company names, but industries.
Well, it wouldn't be a bad, I hadn't really thought about it, Walker, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to try to go to work for some type of sales training company, a Ziegler or whoever, where you could just get on as a youngster and sell for them. And of course you'd learn that stuff inside and out.
Interesting.
I think it would be a heck of a grounding for an education.
Sure. I was just thinking things sometimes. I always have to tell people probably the next job you take will not be the last job that you have. May not even be this. You may not be in the same career pool. I think I've had 5 different careers, probably because I had not read your book, Sales for Noobs. And so therefore I didn't really have a plan. You talked about how your book can help lead people to making the right choices early on. Do you might want to talk about that for a second, John?
Sure. So I run into a lot of people, and I'll put myself in the same class, who kind of put things off until, you're about to graduate, or even maybe you've even graduated, and you're like, what am I going to do now? Well, I'm going to try to find where can I work? I can't get a job in marketing. I don't have a marketing degree. I'm no lawyer. I'm no doctor. So you're like, well, there seems to be hiring in sales a lot. So I'm going to get a job in sales. And so then you connect that dot to some job in sales, like a job in sales, like trying to get a job in sales. And that is so broad. And so a couple of things can happen. You might find a really, really bad job in sales. And I've seen that happen many times. Some of my people came from bad jobs, horrible jobs, terrible jobs. And then you might get completely lucky and find a great job in sales. Unlikely without doing it on purpose, but it's possible. Here's the worst thing that could happen. You find a pretty good job in sales. So it's not your highest calling. It's just kind of mid-level, and kind of all of a sudden you're an expert at chairs and tables or something. And so for the rest of your life, you're going to the chair and table show in Chicago every year. You don't give a damn about chairs and tables. So one of the things I tell people in this book, and when I work with folks, is figure out where you want to hang out. If you love music, let's try to get you a job in the music ecosystem. If you love sports, how about the sports ecosystem? If you love technology, that's going to be kind of easy, the technology ecosystem. So let's get you inserted where you'd like to go to the trade show every year for the rest of your life.
I'm afraid a lot of college kids are at work trying to go work in the beer industry, right?
Yeah. And you know what? That might be fun too. That might be fun too.
Hell yeah. So, John, can I share a couple of things that I've learned from you today, if you don't mind?
Absolutely.
So one of the things was you reminded me about the Colby test and how important that is, or how that can be helpful as a self-guide should you go into sales. And the categories that you talked about, I think I wrote them down. Number one is fact finder, which is how willing you are to go and understand the information. How much time will you spend gathering information? The second was follow through, obviously also important. And the third one was quick start. And quick start is somebody who has initiative, right? They're ready to go get things started. And so all those things are important for a salesperson. And I think that Colby's a great tool to see what your proclivities might be. I also think I love what you said about starting your career in the right place, right? Get a job that puts you in a place that is where you have some passion, where you want to be around. So I think that's great advice too. Again, everybody's going to rush to the beer industry or maybe the pot industry at this point, but there are other things as well that can catch your eye. What are some signs, John, that you have I'll just ask you this before I ask you to share your information. What are some signs that you have a terrible sales job? What are some signs of that? How would somebody know?
Well, it happens usually pretty quickly when the things that they told you during the interview and the hiring process turn out not to be true. Like, we're not going to be able to pay you like we said, or you're not going to be stationed here, you're going to be stationed there. I mean, it happens quickly. So I would recommend, first of all, do more homework. Don't get into that trap. But if you see it and they tell you something weird, just back it on out. Start over. Don't think it's going to change.
Yep. I agree with you. I think also too, culture, where people don't give a shit about each other. They're stepping on each other's necks. There is not a general regard for one another in the office from top down. I would also click that. I also would tell you, most of the time, 90% of the 100% commission sales jobs that are out there suck. And I know there are some that are good ones, and there are some different examples of that, but the majority of people that don't want to pay you to come work for them are also not going to invest in you and not going to spend a lot of time managing you. So I would avoid those places like the plague too. Even though I've taken a couple of all commission jobs myself, I did it with open eyes and got my ass burned on one, and the others were okay. So, John, how would somebody find you?
Well, best way is to go to noobschool.org, NOOB school.org. That's the site that kind of supports the book. The book is school noob. What is it? What's the book, Walker?
It's called Sales for Noobs.
Sales for Noobs. I should know that. So we put a website together to support the book, and in that website, we've got a bunch of videos and my podcast, which hopefully Walker will be on one day. And the specific purpose of those videos and the podcast is interviewing people that are successful today and talking about how they got started and where they screwed up, what they would do different, what they would pass along to a newbie. So we got a bunch of free stuff. You can buy the book through Amazon there. And then we're working on this club where youngsters can join it. These noobs can join it and kind of work towards getting their dream job. So go to noobschool.org. And if you want to contact me directly, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn.
John is a tremendous resource. He cares about people. He cares about young people. He cares about helping them grow, and has shown that over and over and over again. John, you're somebody I really admire. It's fun to watch you as you continue to grow and iterate into different, quite frankly, you just continue to grow and do more and more stuff. And I really value that. I think that's cool as hell that you have not ever, that I know of, just settled, right? There's always the next level that you're moving up to. And that's something that continues to impress me. So, hey, John, thank you so much for being on the show. No BS Sales Team, I hope you've listened and paid attention. I hope you've gotten some good stuff from this. do reach out and buy that book. It's on Amazon, Sales for Noobs, Noobs by John Sterling. If you are an entrepreneur and you are struggling because you say, I never have had formal sales training before, and all of a sudden I got to go out and sell to keep my business alive or to grow it, and I don't know how the hell to do that, much less hire somebody else, maybe it's time you and I had a conversation. Give me a shout, 803-917-2817, or email me, walker@walkermckay.com. Let's have a quick conversation. Don't know if it makes sense for us to work together, but let me know you. So at some point in the future, we can know if we can help one another as well. Hey, John Sterling, thank you so much for being here. You're the man. It's an honor to have you on this show.
Thank you, Walker.